Welcome back to Breakfast Television, 8:30. We're so happy to have, I think this is our very first mayor's panel ahead of the October 1st election. By the way, just a few short days on Monday. We're talking about issues that are important to this island. And also these are very mayors of very Anglophone communities, we should say. Christina Smith is the mayor of Westmount. Jamie Nicholls is the mayor of Hudson. And Jim Beis is the mayor for Pierrefonds-Roxboro borough. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you, and good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we're so happy to have you on because as I just mentioned, a lot of Anglophone communities, and there's been a sense in this election campaign that these communities have potentially maybe been ignored or sort of taken for granted because they tend to vote Liberal. So jump in, by the way, at any time. Are you getting a sense in each one of your communities that people are feeling that they're wanting to change, or are they going to stick to sort of what they know? Christina, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, we've had a Liberal MNA for a long time. We were well served by our Liberal MNA. But I think, yeah, I mean, change is obviously, there's no greater political slogan than change, right? And so there's a real race in Westmount. There's, 7 candidates actually showed up to the debate. And, obviously there's, sort of 2 main parties that are in this race. But I think it probably was slow to start, but people got very engaged. And there's some very local, personal issues that are going on in our community that people really care about. I mean, the Turcotte is one of the biggest infrastructure projects to ever happen on the island. And it's with the Quebec government. It's not without its glitches. It's important. We believe it's, I think all residents of Westmount, everybody believes it's important to invest in that infrastructure, but to really take into consideration the impact it has on the local cities and boroughs that are around it. So I think people are wanting to talk about that. And listen, we're the closest to the people, right? And municipal governments are right on the ground.
You're hearing directly, right? It's the most direct democracy, if you will. I want to talk to you because Hudson tends to sort of get forgotten.
Sure, and it's funny that you mentioned the Turcotte because it does affect the communities around it, but it affects all the communities all the way out to us. So when people are having problems in traffic, they want to use public transit. And so Hudsonites are looking for viable options to getting in their car and going to Montreal and looking for the offers from the provincial parties on public transit. We have 1 train a day, so we'd like to see increases.
1 train a day, yeah, you want more than that.
And I've met with our local MNA, our outgoing MNA, Lucie Charlebois, and we discussed those issues a bit, and it seemed that it was in line with where the Liberal Party is going.
And Jim, you've talked a lot about transport as well, right?
Certainly, being on the West Island and the density being what it is. I mean, we have, my borough is really shared between 2 MNAs, Liberal stronghold. Transport has been a major issue for us, simply because even adding additional transport is often difficult simply because we don't have the density to be able to justify it. And so the citizens and the folks rely on their vehicles. And of course, being what it is, recently we heard about, and you've been hearing about the Urban Boulevard proposal, eliminating the use of cars has created sort of this, I think, needed dialogue in the community. And the folks are much more engaged, I think, with the addition of the English-speaking debate, which is the first ever, I think, was welcomed by the community. And that's allowed people in my community to be a little more informed in terms of the different platforms that the parties are running under. And so that, in my opinion, has helped. The Secretariat as well, that the government announced that all the parties seem to be supporting. The 1 million English-speaking Quebecers in our province are, I think, are going to benefit from that. So what it's done is it's engaged the population to discuss the issues that matter to them, not necessarily throughout Quebec, but in regional ways that will hopefully benefit their quality of life.
We do talk a lot about, obviously, these Anglophone communities in all of your separate communities. There is a sense, again, like I said, that it's taken for granted, it goes Liberal, but among young people in particular, we're hearing more and more, the different polls are showing more interest in newer parties. In parties like Québec Solidaire, they like the ideas, they like the progressive ideas, but especially amongst young Anglophones, again, the idea of sovereignty and separation, they're not even thinking about it or considering it. But it does tend to push young Anglos away from different options. Are you still hearing that sovereignty and separation is a main factor, or are they even thinking about this as they make a decision?
I think that we hear that from the older people in the community. They're suspicious about parties' motives, particularly the CAQ and the idea that François Legault was with the Parti Québécois at one time. So I hear that from the older community, but among the younger cohort, they're looking more at the new offers that are coming, whether it be Québec Solidaire or the NDPQ, which has a surprising campaign. I'm actually surprised at their visibility on the ground. So I think going forward in the next election cycles that we're going to be seeing these newer, smaller parties coming up and growing.
And I guess it's the end of the sort of two parties in Quebec, right? And there is more choice now for citizens. And what I was fearful at the beginning of this campaign was a bit of apathy and lack of voter turnout, and I hope we don't see that. I think if you look around the world right now, the very least we can do is cast our ballot. So I really hope that we can. I mean, our riding has one of the lowest, at 60%. It's one of the lowest urban turnouts at the polls in the last election.
Wow.
And, you know, you could chalk that up to complacency. You know, I know the Liberals going to win, so why would I cast my, you know, why do I need to go to... It matters. Everybody has. It doesn't. Everybody has to have a say in this election.
We're going to take a very short commercial, but I do want to talk about this idea of the complacency, but also on both sides. Are the parties being complacent when it comes to speaking directly to Anglophones and directly to your community? Stay tuned. You're watching Breakfast Television on City TV. All right, it is our mayor's round table ahead of October 1st. By the way, just this coming Monday, as the Quebecers head to the polls. Christina Smith, mayor of Westmount. Jimmy Nicholls, mayor of Hudson. And Jim Beis is mayor for Pierrefonds-Roxboro borough. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about this electoral map, and let's talk about Montreal, right? If you look at the latest polls, it's a sea of red with a couple tiny pockets of light blue and orange for Québec Solidaire. The rest of the map seems pretty light blue, which some would say means that François Legault doesn't necessarily have to pay too much attention in the CQ to Montreal. Is that a feeling that you're getting? What are you hearing from the CQ? Is there a sense that they're open, communicating? You were saying that he's visited Hudson.
Definitely. He's been to our region, not Hudson specifically, but to our region because of the hospital issue. And he's promised, the party has promised to accelerate the hospital. But given the way that the project will progress, it's hard to see how he could actually accelerate it. So I kind of take that with a grain of salt because it seems like that there actually isn't a way to accelerate this project. It has to go through the certain steps.
Yeah, but he did show up.
He did show up.
He did not show up to Westmount.
I mean, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Maybe he's there somewhere, but not to my knowledge, and hasn't reached out to me. I've met the candidate. The CAC candidate has been campaigning hard on the ground, you know, present. You see her doing door-to-door. Philip Couillard, in the past couple months, has come twice to sit down with leaders of our community and have an engaged, small sort of roundtable discussion. Not so much, and I hate the term an Anglo issue. It's not. These are issues for all of Quebec. We care about healthcare. Yeah. We care about education. We care that the whoever is the premier of this province really needs to care about Montreal.
I think too, and I'll just jump in here, is that we talk a lot about Anglophones, but really we have to look at the English-speaking community of Quebec, which is different from an Anglophone, because someone that comes here, that immigrates here, they might pick up English as a language, and so technically they become part of the English-speaking community, even though provincially they're not judged as Anglophones. They don't go in that box, right? They don't go in that box. And so I'm waiting for a political party to start talking about the English-speaking community of Quebec rather than this Anglophone, Francophone division.
The Anglophone issue.
Well, the other reality, too, is, I mean, the issue that really concerns the citizens really is everyday issues. I mean, we talk about healthcare and social service. We talk about transport. We talk about education. We talk about maintaining our school boards in the way they are, as they are the first level of government that involves our communities, right? And we haven't heard much about that. I mean, I know that where I am, the Liberals, because they hold the current seats, seem to be a little more involved in the community. However, the issues that involve the daily life of citizens, that's what matters to people. I mean, and when we talk about the Anglophone community, we need to talk about the immigrant and new arrivals coming into this province. We need to look at even in the regions where you have the Francophone young people that are seeking, what they're going to do in their life. Where are they going to go? Are they going to stay in the regions, or are they going to come to the big cities? And so I haven't heard much about that. I mean, the Anglophone community, the million strong that we are well established, a lot of us in the community. We don't hear a lot about seniors issues, poverty issues that are affecting all all of us.
Before, because I do want to touch on immigration, because that's been sort of a key talking point here in this campaign. Let's look at what happened in Ontario. Let's look at a Doug Ford. Let's look at, you know, the notwithstanding how he wants to get in there and slash City Hall. He wants to make it as small as possible. You know, if you have someone like François Legault who isn't necessarily speaking or engaging that as much as some say he should be in Montreal and in the different communities here, and you know he's said maybe he would consider doing something like that. What is your thought process when you hear this? Do you say this is impossible, this could never happen? How could he govern without us? Take me through what you're thinking.
Well, I think that Montreal, being the driving force that it is in Quebec, as well as Quebec City, really, the major cities really are the economic sort of catalyst for the regions as well. We rely on the cities doing well, and so we have to maintain the ties with the big cities in the regions as well. And the provincial government has to understand that the support has to be given to the major cities in order for them to be able to spread the wealth in the neighboring communities. And in my case, for example, I'm on the west island of Montreal. Hudson isn't far from us. I mean, we have Westmount right around the corner. As much as I like to say that Westmount is part of the West Island in many ways, but in all seriousness, I mean, we all have to do well as well, and we need to feel like this is ours.
But look at what's happening in Ontario.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have a premier of Ontario who basically has no representation from Toronto and is, you know, using the notwithstanding clause on an issue that he didn't really make very clear during the election. You know, you could say in broad strokes he talked about smaller government. I mean, I think he could have said, you know, I'm in the midst of an Ontario mayoral campaign. I'm going to throw the whole thing under the bus. I mean, that is... So I think it's very... I think I would imagine anyone who is going to be Premier of Quebec, if you get to whoever that is on Monday night, certainly will understand how important, and I mean, Montreal has the status as the métropole. We have to be partners. And I think for any of it to work, and we're doing well. The economy is doing well. We are moving forward in this province, and we hope that continues. And that's incredibly important to my residents and to all of our residents. I think
we've run out of time. I know, but I want to. You're trying to jump in. I'll give you the final thought here.
Yeah. Well, just to touch on immigration, Hudson has traditionally, like Westmount, made up. Our residents are made up of a lot of the corporate leadership in Montreal, and traditionally they have been immigrants from other places because, you know, companies look for the most qualified staff available. And so that's a bit worrying, the whole position on immigration that the CAQ has.
We've run out of time. I wish we had another segment. You'll come back maybe after the election, and we'll do the postmortem. Thank you so much for joining us, Christina Smith, Jamie Nicholls, and Jim Beis. Stay tuned. You're watching BT on City. We've got your entertainment coming up.